So tell us about your time in the military.
Oh, that was 8 years.
Pretty broad topic.
Pretty broad, yes. I went in there in 1969, right out of the day after I graduated from high school. I was in the Marines. I didn't take any time in between. So I went into the Marines and to basic and then to Vietnam. And I was in communications, which I didn't even use. I didn't do anything that I learned. First thing is they sent me to school. And then from school I went to Vietnam. And never did anything that I was taught. Right after I got to Vietnam, they sent me to different units. And I don't really know what to tell you guys. Went to Vietnam, came back, went on a Mediterranean cruise. Spent 8 years in the Marines. Got out of the Marine Corps and went into the post office. Worked in the post office, got out of the post office, and I started the Young Marines. I was commander of the Young Marines in Maine for 8 years. So
the Young Marines is like a Marine prep course for younger people.
It was kids from 8 to 18, and I'm still actually thinking about still doing it, but I've taken a break for this year.
Yeah.
You know, the kids are great. We've done a lot with the kids. We went to taken them to Washington D.C. They've gone to Washington D.C. for Memorial Day Parade. We've done wreaths across America. We did a bunch of stuff with the kids. They've done a lot of parades in the state of Maine. Spent a lot of time in Connecticut, Rhode Island. So
that's kind of cool.
So you want to join?
I don't know. Do you guys take dietetics?
Of course we do.
Because I know
we don't discriminate on anybody.
Because I know the military doesn't like the insulin dependent thing.
Oh. It has nothing to do. We take everybody that no matter what their disability is or whatever. Mm-hmm. They're allowed to be in the Young Marines.
So it's more of a moral thing than a physical thing.
There's a lot of physical. The Young Marines is tough to do, but we take, say like you was in there, you couldn't run, so you get waived on it. You know, so it was just any kid has a chance to be in the Young Marines, no matter what.
And when you were in Vietnam, where were you stationed?
Da Nang.
Da Nang.
I was in Da Nang. I was at Red Beach. I was at Freedom Hill. I was at KMB. I was all over.
Oh, wow. What were your main objectives when you were at Da Nang? If we can focus in on one thing.
What did I do?
Was that your longest stay?
No, Da Nang was where my base was, but I was why I was at Da Nang would be my home port. But from there we used to get sent to different areas because my MOS, where it was communications, I'd go somewhere 2 weeks, and I'd come back. Go somewhere else for 2 weeks, maybe a month, come back. Oh. It wasn't like I stayed in Da Nang. It was like a place where when somebody wanted for my job, which I didn't do, they're calling. So I was a radio wireman, and they called and said we need a radio man at Freedom Hill. So I go up there, but they'd already have somebody in their unit that did it, so they put me on guard duty. Or I would go to KMB to set up a switchboard. Be down there, and I end up doing something completely different than what they wanted. Maybe driving a truck, you know. So it was even though I had an MOS and I was called into doing things, I never really worked my MOS.
Oh yeah.
You know.
So you kind of like you just did whatever they needed on.
Yeah, I was sort of like a fill-in man. You know, I would. Okay, I was like, we went to Freedom Hill to take food to the orphanage. So I got on the back of the truck and I guided the truck so that we'd steal the food off the back. You know, went up to Mag 16 and guided helicopters. You know, basically I did a lot of guide duty or a lot of oddball stuff.
Yeah.
You know, this needed to be done, but I would have never been doing my work.
Right.
What I was trained to be. Because why would send somebody to school and never use it? But that wasn't the only person. When we got to Vietnam, we ended up in this big hangar, and they needed more infantry. force recon.
Okay.
So what they did, you stand in a big formation, and they say, how many cooks are out here? So take the cooks out. How many people from motor transport are here? You take them out. So now you guys are recon. They're not driving truck, they're not cooking food, they're out in the field.
One way to phrase it, I suppose.
So but in the Marines, everybody's a rifleman. That's your basic MOS. Everybody's a grunt. So it didn't matter what job you had, you were basically a rifleman. You know what I mean? You're a fighter. So you could have a job. Yeah, you had a job, but your basic job was being a Marine. So you could have a title saying you were a cook, or you were I don't know, you could be anything. You could be a painter. But when you got to Vietnam, if they needed you as a rifleman, you become a rifleman. So.
When you got back home from duty, how did things change?
It wasn't good coming back. Nobody wanted anybody from Vietnam. I came back, first thing I had to do was take my uniform off. Yeah. Because we weren't allowed to wear them because people were throwing eggs at you, tomatoes, dirty diapers.
Oh my God.
Nobody wanted because they considered you baby killers. It was a bad. Coming back here was during the. I don't want to say that. Like everybody was anti-military. You know.
It was during the anti-war, like.
Anti-war. The worst people were the women. The women were the nastiest people for the Marines coming back. They'd smear you with baby.
Yeah.
Dirty diapers, and women were bad. So you get rid of your uniform. When I came back to Vietnam, I figured when I got to Maine, I got off the bus, I put my uniform back on because I figured I could hitchhike.
Yeah.
I walked all the way home. Not one person picked you up because you're in uniform. There was a time when they would pick you up and saw you from hitchhiking, but not one person would pick you up because you're in uniform. I came home. I was here about a week. Well, maybe. Well, about a week, I guess, and I couldn't take it here anymore, so I went back to base because it was such.
Where was your base?
At that time, it was North Carolina. So I went back to North Carolina. I had 30 days leave, and I wouldn't stay here. I stayed here 7 days maybe because it was so bad, and nobody wanted you around. So I went back. I got out of the military. After I got out of the military, I came back, and you couldn't get a job if you said you were a Vietnam veteran. Nobody would hire you.
Jesus.
So I tried to get a job picking apples. They wouldn't let me pick apples. So I went back in the Marines and stayed there until 3 years.
After the 3 years, did the anti-war thing kind of blow over?
It took a long time for anybody to actually. I don't know. I don't know when it stopped, but it took years. If you said you were a Vietnam vet, they just had you as a killer. You know, you ever watch the Rambo movies?
Yes.
You know,
I've
they
seen
thought,
a few of them.
yeah, that's how they took you. If you were a Marine and you'd been to Vietnam, you were crazy, and nobody wanted you around. Because mainly, I think part of the Rambo movie did that, because everybody got involved in that, and the Deer Hunter, and those movies. I don't know if you saw that one, but there was a lot of.
I've seen the one where he gets arrested.
Yeah. Well, that was not Deer Hunter. That was the Rambo movies. He went crazy, not crazy, but he went back to taking survival. But there's a lot of movies that came out at that time, and people sort of related all veterans to that had been to Vietnam, especially Marines. Marines are the worst. So. Nobody wanted to be around a Marine. If you were a Marine, you were definitely crazy. That's how they saw you.
Is there anything that stuck with you through the military? Like a specific event? Something that happened?
No, not really. Just that, I think the military was a very good move for me. For anybody, I think. I'm not really thinking the military is that great for females. I'm sorry. It's not. There's a lot that goes on in there, and I just think that, the females that and they aren't really treated by the men the way they should be treated. Okay, I mean, when I was in the Marines, the females are just looked at as, you know, as if they can't perform the job. Well, some of those jobs you wouldn't want to put females into. Serious. I don't think even today they should be in the jobs they're in. But it's not because they can't do it. But the fact is that there's so many more men there, and females become competition.
Yeah.
You know. So.
Ask a question. You're the one who wrote us the question.
Yeah, but then I don't know what to ask.
Well, you can ask me anything. I don't care.
We're trying to find specific stories to go up, like beside your picture. Do you have any specific stories that you'd like to tell?
About the Marines?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I got stories, but I can't tell you guys.
Why is that?
Some of them ain't that good. Stories. Jeez, Carl, you make it difficult here because I some of the stuff I wouldn't want up there. Well, when I was in the Marines, let's see, I did a lot of traveling in the Marines, which was great. I did a Mediterranean cruise where I got to go to Spain, I got to go to Italy, I got to go to Rome, and I went to Greece, which was fantastic. Greece was great. I went to Crete. I went to a lot of countries, Turkey, and I think the cruise was the highlight of my time there. I mean, it wasn't that pleasant where we had to stay in the bottom of the ship, but the liberty and getting to see all the places I did. Went to Africa. Well, I'll give you a story. Yeah, I got one now. It was in Crete, and it was 3 o'clock in the morning, and my gunnery sergeant came and woke us all up and told us it was our last chance to get our Purple Hearts. So I thought we was going back to Vietnam. And they loaded us on the ship at 3 in the morning, and got on the ship, and we was out in the ocean for a while, and then they come out and told us we're going to Africa. So we went to Africa for landing in Africa because at that time they were having trouble. The blacks had over in South Africa wanted the right to vote and all this stuff. They didn't have the rights that the whites had, and they wanted. So there was an uprising. The blacks had attacked the whites and was killing them off. And we got to Africa, and they made us polish our boots, put clean utilities on uniforms, and they handed us all 10 rounds and sent us to shore. But another ship had landed, and the crisis really over. Mm-hmm. But they landed us so they could take pictures of us, more or less. So landing, you know, because the other guys were all cruddy because they just come off the ship to take care of this deal. So we came off as it's just like when they did the Iwo Jima thing. Flags, when they put it up on the island, weren't the original Marines that raised the flag. There was another bunch that raised the flag again so they could take pictures. So I think it was kind of, we didn't do nothing but come on to shore basically, then come back onto the ship and turn our ammunition in. They counted all our 10 rounds so we didn't lose any, and sent us back on the ship.
And did you get that Purple Heart for that?
No, you only get that when you get shot. You know, and not everybody gets, even though they have an injury. I had shrapnel in my arm. Mm-hmm. Well, there's another story I can tell you.
See, we're getting there.
Oh wow. Yeah, I was at Mag 16, and on the runways, the enemy is trying to blow the runways up. So what they do is they send mortars in, or rockets in, and they walk them in. They send one in that goes in like 10 feet, and the next one goes probably 20 feet, so they can hit the runway. They just keep moving down. Well, this day they were doing that, and I was walking down past some hooches, and a rocket came and hit the hooch and blew the hooch to pieces. Well, the shrapnel got me in the arm. It looked pretty bad. My arm was all blood. Well, it wasn't that bad, but To me it was at the time. So I went down to the first aid station, and more or less got in line, and the corpsman comes out. You know what a corpsman is, a doctor, like. Comes out and they wash my arm off, and all there is a little piece of metal in there, and just cut the surface. It wasn't bad at all. So he gives me hell for wasting his time. All right, coming down. And the thing is, they had 2 people ahead of me, and then there was a dog in there. The dog outranked me. He was a sergeant. And he had got shot. So the dog was more important than I was, because I had a superficial wound. And the dog had got shot. And he outranked me. So he was a sergeant. So I thought that was kind of strange that the dog was more important than I was, and they gave me hell for getting hurt.
Never would have thought a dog would have.
Well, yeah, the dog was. He's important. He was a sentry dog. You know, he got shot. The thing is, what got me was the fact is that it was like I was in trouble because I got wounded, and wasting their time. I didn't know. At the time I was 18.
Yeah, that must have been scary.
There was a lot of blood leaking down, but it was all because it was like a little piece of razors in my arm, you know, just chips.
Yeah.
There was nothing. They didn't bother to take them out. They told me I didn't worry about them. They washed it off, sent me out of there, and that was it.
Oh my God.
And the shrapnel's still in your arm?
Nope. No, this is part of it. Okay. They was in my arm till I came home on a leave, and then my cousin was sitting, in the bar, just chatting and chatting, drinking and chatting. But I wasn't gonna. Anyways, we had a few drinks, and he was talking about the shrapnel on my arm, and he says, "Don't worry, I'll take that out."
Oh, gee.
So we're sitting there, had a few drinks.
Oh, that must have been fun.
He took out his razor blade. He took out his jackknife and cut them all out and put them in an ashtray.
Oh my God.
But they were all on, like I said, like the corpsman told me, they were superficial. They were all on top. They weren't really deep down in. It was just under the skin. You could see them, little black pieces of metal. So it wasn't a hard job. It was just breaking the surface of the skin again and peeling them out. There was only like 6 or 7 of them in there. But yeah, I sat there and had them removed. So now, because it's not my record book, I'm trying to get them in my record book. And I have no record of this happening because I didn't write it down. So now I got to try to find where my cousin is. He's got to write a letter stating that this happened, that he took them out because it wasn't important enough to put them in my record book.
Because it was just superficial.
Yeah, and they were too busy for me. See, that's what got me. They were too busy for me. I don't know what other stories you want, but I got other stories, but I can't really relate them yet. I wouldn't want to put them on the wall.
I'm trying to think of other questions we could ask. When you were on tour, it was to be training to be a medic, right?
No, communications.
Communications. When you went on the cruise ship and stuff.
Right. I was on the cruise ship. I was with 81 millimeter mortars. So there again, I was doing something different than what I was trained for. And actually, during my last few years in the Marines, I was a clerk. I did all the files, directors. I took care of all the books. So again, I didn't do my job. So I'm just saying that just because you go in at something in the military, in the Marines, maybe it's different now. Back in my day, it didn't matter what job you had. You were a rifleman. We had people in the Marines that couldn't speak English. They were from foreign countries. They joined the Marines, so when they got out of the Marine Corps, they become citizens. We had guys in the Marines that gave them a choice of going to jail or going into the Marines. They could do 2 years in the Marines or go to jail for 2 years. Some of the guys that said that they could have never gone to jail and taken the choice of being in the Marine Corps because they thought it rougher than being in jail.
Well, I mean, it probably was. I heard basic training for Marines is hell.
It was. I don't know how it is now, but back in the day when I was there, it was. But then the old timers, we called them I'm an old timer. Back then, the old timers said it was rougher for them. So it was just probably the guys that's in now, when they get out, the new guys go in, they're going to say, oh, it's rougher in my day.
Yeah.
You know, it's just as time changes, you know. I know when I went to basic training, we trained for 6 days a week, 6 days in a week. And on Sunday, you trained half a day and went to church half a day. So you actually trained 7 days a week. But on that half a day that you were in boot camp, that you didn't go to church, you took your clothes out and washed them on a wash rack. Now they throw them in a bag and the laundry does it. But we had to wash all of ours by hand. We had a bucket. Take the clothes, dirty clothes, put it in the bucket with some soap. Then you put it on the scrub rack and used a hand brush and cleaned all your clothes. Then you hung them up on the line and dried them.
I heard doing clothes by hand is really, like, it cramps your hand.
Oh yeah, it's not an easy, with no machines. You just use a hand brush. And I tell you, that's what we did on our half day off. Polished our boots and, you know.
Kept your uniforms clean, that kind of stuff.
Right. And boot camp at that time was 12 weeks. But I was there 16 because when we first got there wasn't enough people to form a unit. So they put us in what was in holding, and what it was, they took your belts, they took everything away from you, and they used you on details. Like we'd go out and we washed the street from Marine Corps barracks to the mess hall on our hands and knees with scrub brushes, so the Marines wouldn't get their feet dirty walking down there. It was just stuff they made you do. It was nonsense.
It was just mental conditioning.
Yeah, and use your toothbrush to wash the whole floor. In buildings, you get down your hands and knees with your toothbrush and clean the floor.
So you can follow orders without asking questions.
Right, and the thing is, during those time that we were waiting for our company, for enough people to form a platoon, you weren't allowed to take showers because you were the dirty dozen. We were the dirty dozen, and they wouldn't allow us to take showers. We had only clothes we had on was what we had on for those weeks that we were there. We couldn't change clothes. We had them. So we did all the stuff that they wanted us to do, but we became the dirty dozen. So
you just clean stuff for 4
we
weeks.
cleaned stuff. We'd go down there and make copies of stuff. We'd take, anything they needed us to do, we did. The secret I had, though, was to take the last bunk away from the door, because when they came in, they usually grabbed the guys up front. So I learned to move to the last bunk over, and a lot of times I got left behind. So the guys that stayed by the door are the ones that got nailed.
And when you were in basic training, you didn't have any time off from waking up to going to bed.
No. There's no time off.
No time off.
There's training all the time. They'd give you an hour to write letters, but they dictate the letters to you. So everybody wrote the same letter home. First letter.
Yeah.
They're telling how great we were told to tell them how great the DIs are taking care of us, how nice, how we enjoyed being here, and all this stuff.
God.
The first letter, they dictated. Then after that, you sent letters home, but you didn't seal the envelopes. They sealed them after they read your letter. So yeah, there was no. And when you did get letters, like my grandmother sent me a newspaper a couple of times, and they used me as a target. To get that piece of that newspaper, I'd have to get up and run into the squad bay, and while they were doing it, they were trying to nail me with a newspaper. So, and I'd have to run every time until they did nail me. If it missed me, then I'd have to go back and do it over again. So, they had taped me out with a newspaper. And if you got any like a cake or anything sent to you, they'd take. First, the guy got a cake sent to him on his birthday, so they went into the storage closet and got a bottle of Joy, liquid detergent, frosted the cake, and let him have some. But you had to eat it that way. There was all kinds of things. Then there was, if you got gum, you had to eat a wrapper, and the whole wrapper in the gum.
Yeah.
You didn't get to peel it off. You ate everything. Because you weren't supposed to get any pogey bait. They called that pogey bait. Anything that was sweets, you didn't get. And if your girlfriend put anything on the outside of the letter, you paid for every word she put on there. You had to do push-ups. like 10 push-ups at every ladder on the outside of that ladder, like silver or kiss or whatever.
Yeah.
You paid for them. Oh yeah. But boot camp now, as I look back, wasn't that bad. At the time, it was like hell.
Well,
I thought I was going to die there, to tell you the truth.
was boot camp better or worse than Vietnam, do you think?
I think I'd rather be in Vietnam. Yeah. I had more time, time that you didn't have to worry about somebody really on your case, I mean, it wasn't like you had to polish your boots every day. You didn't have to, you had a little slack time.
A little bit more wiggle room.
Yeah. And, I got sort of used to Vietnam. Actually, at one time I didn't feel like I wanted to come home because I was comfortable there. I knew what was going on. At home, everybody was telling me what was going on at home. It's actually worse at home.
Yeah.
Yep. So.
Are we ready to photograph?
So, I put an extension for Vietnam, stayed another 6 months, but I got pulled out and sent to Okinawa. So.
What were you stationed for in Okinawa? What was your objective?
My objective in Okinawa was to still do my job, which actually somewhat I did. Because we came back to Vietnam and got to Okinawa, some of the guys hadn't been to Vietnam. Mm-hmm. So they separated the people that had been to Vietnam from the ones that were going over because they didn't want us to spoil them. Didn't want us to tell them any stories. So Okinawa is called the Rock, and there's a reason it's called the Rock. It's all coral rock. So they took the guys that had been to Vietnam and they put us on a detail, digging a ditch around the whole runway with jackhammers and sledgehammers. And
why were you digging a ditch?
to bury the underground cable. So I actually did my job then, but actually not what I really wanted to be doing.
Yeah.
So we spent time putting underground cables into the runway, but it was all coral rock. It was long, hard days.
How long did that take?
It took us about 3 months.
Jesus.
Jackhammers
for 3 months.
Yeah, there was like 8 of us doing that. So.
I bet you were strong after that.
Well, yeah, that and the idea.
Just a little.
That and at the time I came back to Vietnam, I was only 28 inches around the waist. And so I had lost a lot of weight in Vietnam, and it was mainly because of the heat and everything else. No matter what, you just sweated constantly in Vietnam. It was hot. So there wasn't much I was making when I came out of Vietnam. First thing I did when I got to Vietnam was flush toilets. That was the biggest thing. We didn't have no toilets in Vietnam. You had outhouses and little holes in the ground. So the biggest thing was just to go there and just listen to that toilet flush.
Never appreciate the little things.
Oh yeah, you get to appreciate a lot of stuff. Cold drinks. Yeah, because there wasn't much cold stuff. The donut dollies though were pretty good.
The what?
Donut dollies. They had cold drinks for us. They were there were women that volunteered to go over there, and they called them donut dollies. When you went up to Freedom Hill, that's where they were. They were actually the Red Cross, but they had ice cold milk and donuts. If you went up, you got to go there. You could go. It's like going to, I don't know,
like Dunkin' Donuts.
Dunkin' Donuts, but it wasn't no coffee. It was ice cold milk and good donuts that they made, and that was a big thing going to see the donut dollies. Yeah.
That must have been nice. Used to like warm water most there.
Warm water, yeah, and we did have some cold drinks once in a while, but very seldom. It was most everything was warm. So.
All right, I think we're gonna start heading back into the art room.
Enough information.
I think we got a.
Hope I hear something good.
Very good.